I do have it, but it's in my pocket, and I figure enough people around here. It's 7 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled meeting. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier-Wise.
Here.
Erickson. Holland.
Here.
Humphrey.
Here.
Mines.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Mayor Powell.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3 are minutes from August 21st regular session, August 21st special session, and August 23rd special meeting.
Move approval of minutes. Second.
A motion and a second to approve all 3 minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. John or Mike, do you have any corrections, additions? Seeing none.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5, under visitors to be heard, we have 2 proclamations. First is a Direct Support Professionals Week proclamation. And Catherine, if you would read that, please.
Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week. Whereas direct support workers, direct care workers, personal assistants, personal attendants, in-home support workers, and paraprofessionals are the primary providers of publicly funded long-term support and services for more than 4,000 individuals with disabilities in day, residential, and family support programs in South Dakota. And whereas a direct support professional assists an individual with disabilities with the most intimate needs on a daily basis and provides a broad range of support in order to live meaningful, productive lives. And whereas a direct support professional provides essential support to keep individuals with disabilities connected to their family and the community and is key to assisting them to live successfully in their own community. And whereas there are more than 3,700 direct support professionals working in the Family Support Program, the 19 community support provider agencies, and the South Dakota Development Center. And whereas SESDAC Incorporated, a community support provider in Vermillion, employs 100 direct support professionals who provide services and supports for 100 people to realize independence and happiness. And whereas it is fitting and proper as citizens to honor the direct support professionals' workforce for the tremendous difference they make each day in the lives of South Dakotans and Vermillion citizens with varying needs and abilities. Now, therefore, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim September 10th through 16th, 2017 as Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week in Vermillion and call upon citizens to observe this week with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies in recognition of direct support professionals in their community. Dated at Vermillion, South Dakota, this 5th day of September 2017.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there a representative? Receive this, please. Do you have somebody going to say something at the microphone? At the mic, please.
My name is Sawyer Heidish. I've been with SESDAC for coming on 2 years now. I would like to thank everyone here. On behalf of the DSPs, my coworker Mariah, Danielle, Joe, everyone involved with SESDAC, and every DSP in the state of South Dakota, as far as I'm concerned. We certainly appreciate being recognized, so thank you.
Thank you for the work you do. We have a second proclamation for Lions Club Day. And Tom, please.
whereas Lions Club International is, I forget to turn my mic on. I'll start over. Whereas Lions Club International is an international, secular, non-political service organization with more than 46,000 local clubs and more than 1.4 million members in more than 200 countries around the world. And whereas the Vermillion Lions Club was founded in 1950 and has many active members involved in fighting vision problems and volunteering for many different community projects, including caring for the environment, feeding the hungry, and aiding youth, seniors, and the disabled. And whereas the Vermillion Lions Club has graciously agreed to host the annual Fall Forum for South Dakota Southeast Lions, and whereas Lions Club members in Vermillion, South Dakota, in the United States, and throughout the world have elevated the preparation, serving, and enjoyment of pancakes as an international comfort food and an effective instrument for raising funds to support their endeavors, and have heightened the preparation and serving of those pancakes into a masterful culinary art. And whereas they have undertaken the charge of Helen Keller to be Knights of the Blind, and have grown that challenge into providing assistance in procuring of sight and hearing assistance to those who may be unable to afford to find such needed care. And whereas they have undertaken the challenge to find cures and relief for certain diseases, and whereas through the formation of foundations have found ways to effectively allow the members of Lions Clubs to continue to serve their fellow man in many ways, and whereas all Lions Clubs throughout South Dakota, the United States, Canada, and the whole world have found a multitude of ways to serve their fellow citizens locally, nationally, and worldwide. And whereas they do all of these things in a setting of goodwill, companionship, respect, and altruism. Now, therefore, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, declare September 30, 2017 as Lions Club Day in honor of the club's great work and service. Dated at Vermillion, South Dakota, this 5th day of September 2017.
Thank you, Tom, and I'll see that this gets to the Lions membership. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on a topic that is not on the agenda? Not on the agenda, please come to the microphone and give your name and address, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Laura Kruger. I live at 9 West Duke Street here in Vermillion, South Dakota, 57069. I came here to present a concern in which I live at the corner of Duke Street and Cottage, right behind Ace Hardware. And I came here to address a concern in regards to the stop sign intersection, in which there are many vehicles that continue to drive through that intersection. I come to you as a mother, also an educator within the community. I wrote down a few items that I wanted to make sure I did not overlook, so if you don't mind, I'm going to reference my phone. A couple things I wanted to mention. 2 weeks ago, the city repainted the lines, crosswalk lines at the intersection because they were sorely faded for quite some time, and I'm extremely grateful for those. I'm also grateful for the communication in which myself and the police officers within the community have withstand within the last several months as this concern has grown over time, and also this forum to bring up these concerns. I will vocalize to you that painting of the lines has helped a little bit, but the issue still is existence that vehicles still run through the intersection where that stop sign intersection is. Whether or not they don't stop or they screech to a halt at the very last minute. And I might remind you, I have 2 young children, 6 and 3 years old. While all directions are a concern in which the vehicles travel, the avenue, the direction coming from Cherry Street from the parking lot of Ace Hardware is what I have noticed is of least or lesser concern of the other 3. Primarily, as you may assume, because of the stop sign at that street up ahead and also the parking lot. They don't have much room to get speeding up ahead, where in the other 3 directions there's much more of a concern. Also, as I spend much time outside, the stop signs are often overlooked in two of the directions coming from the university and also from 50. There's branches that are in the way, and that might be one way that can be helpful. Another concern is that there's a school bus stop right nearby, right in front of Ace Hardware. So there's a lot of children that that are around that intersection, let alone the foot traffic and the vehicle traffic due to the recycling and also the stores nearby. As I am in my driveway, there are way too many drivers that are obviously looking at their phone, and now that the college students are back in town, they're also looking at their phone, and God forbid that both of them are looking at the same time and something happens. Some ideas I wanted to bring to your attention if this were to be a conversation, which I urge you to consider having conversation to identify some additional ways beyond just painting on the lines in the intersection. A couple things to bring to your attention that I've thought of, and I'm open to other commentary at a later time, however that may see fit. But whether it be lights around the perimeter of the stop sign to bring attention to that there is a stop sign to stop for. I know I've conversed with this city of Vermillion, the police department, and there's also a big issue with speeding on Duke Street. So the combination of these is integral. Secondly, whether it be rumble strips or speed humps or speed tables. Speed tables are longer speed humps. And since the fire department is at the end of the road, speed tables, which are longer speed humps, are likely more emergency vehicle friendly, if you may, and maybe more suitable. But nonetheless, those might be some very, very valid ideas. Another thing would be to obviously trim the branches around the area, but in my opinion, that would be a very, very cheap and economical suit option, but I don't know if that would be solely effective. And then the other way would be if down on Cottage Street at the corner of Cottage and Rice Road to make that a four-way stop to slow down traffic. I would entertain any and all ideas, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. That it is a deep concern that I have as a citizen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, would it be appropriate to have the police chief look into that? Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Anyone on the city council have anything that they wish to bring forth? Okay, move on to public hearings. Item A, resolution adopting a comprehensive plan for the city of Vermillion. And Jake, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is something that staff has been working on for several years with the Planning Commission and CCOG, and that is putting together our 2035 comprehensive plan. This is something we are legally required to do and serves as a land use planning document that directs our growth and development here in Vermillion. So kind of just the recent history of this. Planning Commission has been working on this for a while. A few weeks ago on August 23rd, we held a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and City Council. A few changes and additions came out of that meeting, which staff added into the document. We posted that on our website for the public to view. And then last week at the August 28th Planning Commission meeting, the Commission unanimously approved the plan and recommended to the City Council, and so at that time it was emailed to the Council and also posted online for anyone to look at. I will note that at the Planning Commission public hearing, we did receive a letter from Chris Larson of Clay Union Electric that has been included in the packet. And so at this point, staff is asking the City Council to conduct a public hearing on this final draft of the 2035 comprehensive plan and consider it a resolution adopting the plan.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak may do so at this time, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Please forgive me, I am going to read this so I can keep it within my 5-minute time period that is allowed. Again, thanks to the Mayor and the City Council members for allowing me to speak. My name is Chris Larson. I'm the General Manager of Clay Union Electric, located at 1410 East Cherry Street. I'm here representing our cooperative of 2,700 members, which approximately 200 of them are within the city limits of Vermillion, including the Mayor himself. I became the general manager in February of 2016. My family lives in the Bliss Point addition, and we're happy members of Clay Union Electric. I'm here to testify that Clay Union can't support the city comprehensive plan in its current form. I believe, as was just stated a minute ago, that you all have my written comments as presented to the planning committee, so I won't repeat most of that information. I do want to thank John Prescott for working with me on some recommended changes that I suggested. So John and I have talked about it. We did make some changes in the plan, and I do appreciate his time there. I still question parts of the document, however, especially where it states that the city will work with the county to ensure all proposed development within Vermillion's growth areas are annexed and served with municipal utilities. I spoke to a county commissioner about that statement and asked him if that was truly their position, that they felt everything needed to be annexed like that, and his comment back to me was he had never seen the document. He went on to talk to fellow county commissioners who I believe he had told me had never seen the document too. So now whether it's just something they had forgot or whatever, but they seem to have very little input into what was put into this document. And then the other thing that does concern me is when you look at the future growth area that's pointed out within the document, it's pretty much all within Clay Union Electric service territory. Another area of concern is when it refers to economic development, when it's talked about. Clay Union believes that economic development is vital to the community and to our cooperative members. But what this document says is that it will be necessary to ensure that all proposed development is servable with municipal utilities. Once again, Clay Union Electric is out there. We have a defined service territory out there that is within those future development areas. If that is true, then why should I spend my members' money trying to help bring new business to town if the city plans to take the service rights away from me as soon as it's developed? In my second week on the job, I found out by looking through the city council agenda that the city of Vermillion was considering the annexation of the city airport. I received not one phone call from anyone saying, hey, we're considering annexing the airport hangars. In other words, a portion of my member service territory and assets were up for consideration to be taken away without so much as a heads-up phone call. State law does allow for annexation to happen, but wouldn't you think in a small community like Vermillion, a friendly heads-up would have gone a long ways. When it came down to approving the transfer compensation amount that's required when a piece of property is annexed away the service territory rights, the city council member asked how much would the cost to the city be annually for annexing the hangars. The city staff that was testifying said they had it in the budget, but they couldn't answer the question, and eventually I answered the question from the back of the room. That leads me to question how much study had been put into consideration of that annexation before it happened, or was it done because state law said we could? The city has or is working on agreements with Clay Rural Water on which entity shall serve water utilities in the future growth areas. That makes sense so as to not cause community members to pay more to have two service providers in the same area. Maybe a similar agreement could be made with Clay Union. There are state-defined electric service territories that tell my cooperative who we can and can't serve. We use those to plan our future. It is impossible to make plans for the future when one group can randomly take your service territory whenever they want. I've mentioned that I would like the City Council to adopt a policy that asks for a study to be done before any annexation and transfer of Clay Union Electric service territory takes place. This plan could detail all of the costs and benefits to everyone that is affected. If all the details were made to the community and cooperative members, then an informed decision could be agreed upon, and there would not be duplication of services like there is today. In conclusion, Clay Union can't support the comprehensive plan as written today, as we see it as the blueprint for the cherry picking of substantial electric loads and the unjustified taking of our electric service territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this topic? Anyone else? Seeing none, turn it to the council for deliberation.
I'd like to ask Mr. Larson a question, if I may. You're against this even if we, I don't know, we would have to promise to study in the future, or do you want, if you were to change this again and diplomatically work more of this out with the city manager so that you know, the county and the city, and in our case, the city, could approve an 18-year look-ahead plan, what would you do? What would you change? What would you have us do, given that we have electric customers?
I think the biggest...
Can you come to the mic?
Yep, I sure can. I think the biggest thing that I see going on in this community since I've been here is we have such duplication of services. One prime example is Crawford Road, where the city is annexed on one side of the road and the other side is still Clay Union service territory. We have underground cable that runs along there, and since the city started building the HICUS substation out here on the HICUS property out there, they come along and bored through there. In a matter of 2 days, our lines were struck twice where we had outages for our members. And so my phone rang off the hook, giving me, let's say, both barrels of the shotgun because we had outages. And I had to make the statement, well, nothing we can do. A contractor hit the line, and that member told me I need to go out there and basically beat the crap out of them. And we all know that's not the way to do. But I think we need to come to some kind of understanding or agreement where we're not double building this community, causing members of both the community and my cooperative, which are one and the same at times, where we've got this duplication. I'll give that HICUS property a prime example. We've got a substation 3/4 of a mile down the road. If that property wouldn't have been annexed, we had the services right there to do everything we could to more than adequately serve that load. As far as our East River transmission system, we could not be as in a more perfect position in this area of the state to have what's called a redundant feed. So their power substations can be fed from, I believe it's 4, I'm going to say 3 for sure, 3 different directions into this community. So if something happened up north, a major ice storm happened up north and took out the transmission there, we can bring it out of the south or we can bring it out of the east. So Clay Union is sitting about as great as you can at that. I do understand the city and they're wanting to annex those properties, you know, and I understand they need to get a return on their money also. And probably it's a little bit tough to a little bit longer payback period if you don't provide the electric services there. But I think as part of the community, we can come together and talk about this and form a plan that both is adequate for the city's needs, plus it gives my members some kind of outlook for the future so we can make planning out there. Rural electric cooperatives started partially because of IOUs were cherry picking. They were doing the corridors of major highways. They were going out and grabbing big loads. Rural electric cooperatives come in because we served everybody out in the country. So our density, the density for my co-op is 3 meters per mile. And if you come into the city, that's probably more like 60 to 90 meters per mile. So
you understand the city, obviously we're competitors for electric customers, and again, what would you have us do? At the same time, we have to protect our system, our plans to annex, but we certainly would want to be doing it diplomatically, and I was glad to hear that you and the city manager and the staffs and all this have worked together, but now it's decision time by the elected people. So what would you have us do?
Tom, I would like to interject that the county isn't involved with this other than one of the county commissioners is serving on the board.
Yeah,
so it isn't a matter of city-county.
But it's here in front of the city now, and I don't know what you would have us do that's...
With state law as it is today, the city has every right to go annex anything that is contiguous. The exception was the city airport, which by state law says the city can go get a city airport anywhere that it exists. What I would ask, as I suggested in here, is if the city is considering annexing any of our service territory, first of all, please, somebody just give me a phone call, give me a heads up, hey, this is what we're looking at. But I would like a comprehensive study done and make sure it's in the best interest of everyone. Prime example I feel is that Hikas property out there, that there was duplicate services built out there that could have saved some money in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Given that this is for an 18-year look ahead, and it can be changed, I understand that, but is there a certain deadline we need to pass this by legally? Anything like that?
Oh, I don't remember the date. Do you know, John?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly. Further discussion? Further discussion?
I guess I could.
Steve?
John, were there any discussions about Clay Union during the...
I wasn't involved with the Planning Commission all the way through this. This started several years ago. There were I'll call them focus groups, that's probably the wrong word, but they had met with, for example, rental properties. They met with landlords. There's different community groups, the USD, that they had around the community several years ago as one of the stages to gather information. There's a public survey piece, I believe, that anybody could offer comments about the plan. That was one of the steps involved with it. A lot of the comments that have been referenced are in what's part 2 of the plan, and part 2 was largely completed probably about 2 years ago, I would guess. And so then the Planning Commission focused more on part 1, and then with some staff changes we had, that led to a little bit of delay in getting it completed. So a lot of this information, like I said, is in part 2, and so that was before I was actively attending Planning Commission meetings because we had other staff that were covering it.
Further? Oh.
I'm not sure that we need particular language today that would address the concerns of Clay Union to go into the comprehensive plan. I certainly could. I do think the city and Clay Union could develop a process on their own outside of the comprehensive plan to meet the concerns of both parties. But I don't see the urgency to implement something into this today, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
John, please.
I think, as Jake alluded to, the comprehensive plan is a land use planning document. That's the genesis of its origin. I mean, that's what it's about. Electric service territory questions, as has been added in there, it states that, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically the city council will have to consider with each annexation if you want to extend the electric service territory. That is a policy decision that the city council makes. And so a planning document versus a policy decision, regardless of whether it is written into this document or not, steps that need to be taken, ultimately, by state statute as it currently exists, the city council has to take a specific, approve a specific motion of intent to serve that area. So you will still always have that regardless of what's written in there. That helps.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I would say that I don't see any reason we can't go forward with approving the comprehensive plan tonight. At the same time, I would hope that we could encourage city staff that if there are some communication issues, that we try and address those better, have more open dialogue so that people don't feel like they're blindsided. But again, that's not necessarily a policy decision, it's just a kind of matter of course. You know, as far as the feeling that some of the things included in the comprehensive plan seem like an attack on territory, I think to a certain extent, because we rely so much on our electric utility as a funding source, we're just always going to be looking that direction. I mean, there's really not a way to get around that competitive element because we rely on that utility as one of the ways that we provide services to our citizens. And so I think if we were to put something in that softened that language or gave it away, I feel like we wouldn't be doing service by our taxpayers and our citizens. But at the same time, I think that we could work on improving the relationship without changing the language of the comprehensive plan. So with that, I would move approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, certainly.
I feel, I'm concerned, I guess the right word is, or a little bit feel like I've been kind of blindsided. I'm on city council, and I rely on the information supplied to me, and I expect it to be good information. I had no idea that you have a station out in the northeast section of town. While we were developing this thing, which has been going on for quite a while, and we've spent quite a bit of money, it would have been nice to have known that sooner, sir, and that's kind of your responsibility. It's your business, and you have a right to say, why are you doing this when I already have it prepared? So in the future, if we decided to do plans like we do, and we're doing it for the benefit of our citizens in our city, please let us know of other things. It may have considered greatly what we decided to do. But I think in this particular case, and like I said before, the comprehensive plan is not written to try to favor anybody or any particular direction. And we're not trying to legally steal anything. It's a plan. It's mostly a land plan. And I think it's fine, but I'm glad that you've come forth. We can open some dialogue and perhaps improve in the future. Thank you.
The second motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Can I just ask one question? On the average, John, what's the length of a comprehensive plan? Are they usually 18 years ahead? I mean, I believe in planning ahead, but that seems like a lengthy period.
Average comprehensive plan is a 20-year.
But I think it's to be right, correct me if I'm wrong, every 5 years it's supposed to be
Every
reviewed.
5 years you take a look at it and have the potential for a major revision.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. Further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. We have no old business, so we'll turn to new business.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I make one quick comment?
Sure.
I appreciate the council listening to me, and I just want to let the mayor know and John know Clay Union Electric is always open to talk. It's better to talk ahead of time and discuss issues out and openly, and I've told John this since the day we met here. We met the first month I was here. I'm open to dialogue to try and repair any fences that may have been broken down in the past. But we want to look forward and be partners with the city. So
thank you, Chris. And so you're not going to cut my electricity?
I haven't seen Lori's list yet, but I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 8A, review and use of malt beverage markup receipts collected, proposed to use funding during 2018 budget year, and public input on continuation of the wholesale license fee. John, please.
Thank you. Back in 2015, the development of Ordinance 1325, which became Section 112 of City Code, once adopted, the idea was proposed that there annually be a review of malt beverage markup receipts if the ordinance was adopted, as it then was by the City Council and the community in 2015. And so the language basically says that annually there'll be an adoption of with the budget ordinance, there'll be a review of the malt beverage markup receipts and the proposed use of them for the upcoming budget year. The ordinance did go on to say that the proceeds would be used for general obligation bonds related to park improvements or other park improvements. So all the money by the ordinance does go for park improvements. But annually we do have this review, and just to update the council and the community, included in your packet, but this is the numbers, if you will. During 2016, the city collected $116,455.40 from the 5% markup on the wholesale cost plus freight of malt beverages. And during the first 7 months of 2017, the city has collected $65,161.28. The general obligation bond debt service, which is where all the money is going, per council direction and in compliance with the ordinance. In 2016, you had debt service on the general obligation bond for the park improvements of $199,853.71. During the 2017 budget year, the amount is $197,067.50, and your debt service next year in 2018 is $195,817.59. Invoices are sent out monthly with respect to the malt beverage markup. We did include notice of this hearing with the malt beverage markup that went out during the first week of August. It's also been announced at city council meetings and included in the minutes, which are published in the legal newspaper. At this point in time, that's the information that the city staff would offer unless the council or the community has questions.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic?
Hello, I'm Joshua Suing, work for Hy-Vee. We've been part of this markup since the very beginning. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the bars and stuff being added this year. I guess my biggest discussion is, I would love for it not to be here because it's a big expense to our business. I think a lot of people don't understand where the money comes from for this markup. They feel like it's being passed on to the malt beverage people, and honestly that isn't 100% true. The people that promote malt beverages, because looking back over the years, I mean, I'm just going to use the best-selling, which is Bud Light 24-pack. It cost $16.30. We sold it for $16.99 when it started in July of 2015, or if that was the right date. The cost went up to $16.85. We still sold it for $16.99. We're not able in a retail establishment, I mean, because it's a price point we have to be competitive with that is not being passed on, is coming out of our budgets, is coming out of our employees' raises, those kind of things, to pay for this markup. It's not as easy for us as somebody selling a whole package to pass on just adding 50 cents a cup like it was discussed back and then. Is not being added on. My biggest fear going into another cost increase, the cost of that same package is going to go up to $17.75 here in a couple weeks. Obviously, because of laws, we will have to take our retail up finally to $17.99. But again, we're paying the city over 80 cents for that every time. So we actually lose money every time we sell a package of that. So I guess my biggest ask is there's been a 9% sales or 9% increase in cost since this started. Would it be 7 or 19 months ago? Is that how long it's been now? Is that you guys consider lowering the percentage from 5% to 4.5%? You as a city would still get as much income based off of that percentage. I've done the math. If we sell 2%, not even 2% more units, you will still get the same income by lowering it to 4.5% because it's been more than a 9% cost increase, and it's based off a cost that the 5% you guys get. So I would like you guys to consider dropping the percent from 5% down to 4.5% going forward. It shouldn't affect the dollar amount that you collect, especially with adding the bars. You actually collect more going forward to pay for the bonds. Thank you.
Does your markup have to include the 5% as far as?
I've asked that question to John several times, that if that's included in the cost. It is not, from my understanding. I mean, the wholesale price or the wholesale cost I pay the wholesaler is what it has to be passed on to. It's the same thing. I mean, the competitors that I deal with too, I mean, we base off the cost, not that 5% is for the retails.
So you, if I understand you, then you don't have to pay you don't have to price it at cost plus 5%. Is that what you're saying?
Not from my understanding. I've asked that question several times over the years, consulted with lawyers. I've asked that question when I came here and asked that question, and nobody's ever been able to give me that answer. And still to this day, nobody has. If that 5% is part of legal costs or not. From my understanding, it's not. It's based off of what we pay Confling or Johnson or Dakota Beverage.
But you do have to include freight, is that right?
What's that?
You do have to include freight.
Freight, yes. Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this? Okay, John, please.
Well, Josh, we've had this discussion, and I have the emails that you had sent to me about it, where the Jody Cloud with the Special Taxes Division of the Department of Revenue, she sent it to Les in your accounting department, and you forwarded to me where the answer is. In the 5% wholesale, 5% markup is on the wholesale cost plus freight. And so legally, as they communicated to you, it is not coming out of your employees' wages. It's not coming out of anything like that. This is a tax that you are to pass on.
It's
so
not
it does not come out of the business proceeds. It comes out of a tax that you should be charging, as well as every other business in town should be charging. That's where your revenue should come from to pay it.
But the thing is, it's not a tax, so you guys have made that clear in the past. It's a markup, not a tax.
I understand that it's been called that way, but the Department of Revenue has defined it as it is the wholesale cost plus the freight. Is what the 5% is the basis for determining the 5%.
Yes.
And you are to collect the 5% based on those two numbers.
We have to pay you 5% based on those two numbers.
And you're supposed to collect that according to the Department of Revenue. It should not come out of profits of the store, employee wages, or anything like that. It is a fee that you are to collect from the customer based on that.
Not the way that I guess it was responded to me, that it is the wholesale price that they look at the retail.
It's the wholesale price.
Yes.
The wholesale price plus freight is the basis that is used to calculate your 5%.
Yes.
But that has to be a fee assessed to the customer. It should not be, according to the Department of Revenue, it should not be coming out of, you tried to come out of the wages or raises or anything like that. That is a fee that should be collected that way. And the city cannot enforce that. The Department of Revenue can enforce that if business X is not charging that. That is a Department of Revenue situation that only they can enforce. The city cannot enforce that.
I guess reading that email, and I think the same thing I passed on to you, my understanding is we pay you 5% on that. It does not say that has to be passed on to the customers. That still is unclear.
Okay. Hi, Les. I discussed your inquiry with my assistant director, Jason Evans. Per Jason in the statute, I received the 5%, the 5% is a markup and should be included in your cost pricing.
I guess, can I read it?
Sure. Yeah.
Should be included in your cost pricing. So I guess one of the things from the city
Well, the 5% is based on wholesale cost plus freight. Whatever that number is, that's what the city is supposed to receive as revenue from this ordinance. Mm-hmm. What you sell it for is entirely up to you. Yeah. And if you don't include that 5% in your retail price to the customer, then you are probably doing something to yourself to hurt your profit, you know, your bottom line. But it's up to you to sell it at a price that's going to help your business and still be competitive, you know, with others in town. Yeah. And you know, that's your decision. The thing you don't have any discretion over is where the 5% is figured on, and that's the wholesale cost plus freight.
Okay. So that's what I said earlier. That's not part of it.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
I mean, I think what it comes down to is this is a Department of Revenue issue. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we can discuss it, but we don't have any sort of interpretation or enforcement power on it. Okay. And so it seems like the clarification has to come from the Department of Revenue. Otherwise, I mean, we could give you our opinion and it could be right, but it doesn't do you any good because we're not the people with the authority here.
I see what you're saying. So
yeah, I
guess
totally
my bigger
understand.
ask, and I'll set that to a side, is that
obviously it's
as
confusing.
Costs go up, what the city collects goes up. I mean, and we're looking at 9% already in less than 2 years. Can we consider lowering that 5%? Because you still will collect as much, because as cost goes up, you will collect more because you collect more out of that 5%, correct? I mean, doing that math, that you could collect the same amount. So.
I may misunderstand some of this, but I understand that there's a myriad of regulations when it comes to alcoholic beverages. The stronger, the more. But I also understand that a grocery retailer operates on volume, and every penny makes a difference. Yeah. Is there some method, somebody in your competitors group that is able to make this a permanent lost leader or something? Is it that kind of thing that, because everyone is facing this who sells malt beverages? Yeah,
and honestly, I mean, there's a select few of us that sell malt beverages in town. I mean, it's the convenience stores, myself, the Walmart, I mean, that sell packaged liquor at this point. I mean, my understanding is that all the bars gave up their off-sale license. I think one is asking for it back finally. But yeah, I mean, there is one dominant leader that basically sets the price point, and if you want to attract people in the store that buy malt beverages, you're going to beat that retail. And that's kind of where it sets. I mean, it's one of those competitive items that is very price sensitive.
John?
Yeah.
I'll just offer a little background, Josh, on this. And I think you've heard some of this before, but as you know, up until April of 1988, the malt beverage markup could be more than 5%, and it could be also on liquor. Yeah. And so from my calculations, we have 63 communities in our state that have at least a malt beverage markup, and some also have the liquor, but we're just in malt beverage. And from my research, I can only find 6 of those 63 that have something less than 5%. And actually, if you average the 63 communities, the average malt beverage markup in South Dakota is 7.02% amongst those 63 communities. So we are less than what our state average is. And so I just offer that as background, that we are in, as you well know, the city to our north, Brookings, that has both a Hy-Vee and a Walmart. Yeah. They have the 10% malt beverage markup. Yeah. So they have double what we have. And as you shared with me in the chamber retreat, that's a very successful story.
Yeah, he's totally right. I mean, it is 10%. I guess my biggest thing is, I mean, this money, from my understanding, was set aside for a purpose, to pay these bonds. And I don't get it. I'm in retail. I don't understand all that stuff. I'll tell you that. So as the cost comes up, you're collecting more. I mean, there should be a point where that percent should be able to come down, because if that money is set aside just for this specific item, the percent should come down as the cost comes up. And with the cost going up that dramatically in less than a 2-year period, I just asked, maybe it's not this year, but thinking forward, and I'll probably be here every year, do we eventually take it down? Because as a business owner, I mean, the pool, I mean, it's important to our community. I'm not going to say it's not. And I would love for it just to go away. I'm not going to argue that it should go away. But I do ask that we do consider that it is used for this purpose. If we're hitting that dollar amount, which it sounds like we're not quite hitting it at this point, do we eventually take that percent down? Because it is a 5% max. We don't necessarily have to do the max. Can it be 4.5% because you're collecting the same at 4.5% as you were in June of 2015 as the figures that they would have done in that year?
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
Yep.
I think before us is consideration to continue the 5% markup. I think that's the issue before us.
Move approval.
Motion and second to continue the 5% markup. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, first reading of ordinance 1359 to amend Title 15, Chapter 155, Sections 155.08, .30, and .39 to update the definition of airport and include municipally owned airports in the permitted use of natural resources conservation zoning districts. And Jake, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so this is something that we referenced a little bit earlier with discussion of the comprehensive plan, but we've been operating the airport for many years, since 1957. It was recently annexed into the city in 2016. Everything we annexed into the city originally, it starts out as NRC, Natural Resource Conservation, which is the most restrictive form of zoning. Currently, right now, our code does not allow for airports as an allowable use in NRC zoning, and so this was a measure we came up with to try to rectify that. Right now, airports are only allowed in heavy industrial zoning, and so where we have that in town right now is northeast part of town. And so our proposed ordinance does a few things. The first is just to eliminate airports as a use in heavy industrial zoning. We think that judging where we have this at and looking at if the chances of a future airport being put in, just that heavy industrial is not the place for that. Secondly, we remove the definition of airport as it currently is in our zoning regulations and adds in the definition of a municipally owned airport, and that would just be one that is, as we have in here, owned and maintained by the city of Vermillion. And so that would be added into the code. And then finally, we would add a municipally owned airport as permitted use under NRC zoning. And so this is something that came before the Planning Commission, this ordinance, August 28th. They unanimously recommended it to the council, and we would do the same. And so just to make sure I get all these right, so we're recommending approval, first reading of ordinance 1359. This would modify chapter 155 to delete airport definition, add in the municipally owned airport, and then add municipally owned airport as permitted use in NRC zoning, and then it would finally delete airport as a conditional use in heavy industrial zoning.
Thank you, Jake. Council?
Can I ask one question?
Certainly.
Is there any, I'm sure there isn't, but just in case, is there any risk in putting such an incongruous use in as a permitted use? I mean, this is natural resources conservation, and to put something like an airport that does seem a bit more industrial, is there any possible issues with that, or we can just kind of stick in whatever for these small exceptions?
I guess what I would say to that is that we were careful to make sure this was a municipally owned airport. A private group could not come in and, say, propose building an airport in a park, because that's technically allowed. This is just municipal. I personally don't see the city of Vermillion adding in another municipal airport, but that is something we could discuss.
Further discussion?
Second.
Motion and second to approve first reading of ordinance 1359. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the first reading of ordinance 1360 to delete chapter 157 airport zoning. And again, Jake, please.
So it's rare in government that we get to take something out of the law and not add something in, so that's what this is doing. So right now, Chapter 157 is something that was in our regulations, and going through it, a lot of what's in there is now covered by the FAA, different regulations, and there's certain boards that are mentioned in there that we don't have. I think the one is the Airport Board of Adjustment is just something that we don't use, and again, most of the regulations covering this are either covered in Chapter 91 of the code or through other state and federal regulations. And so city staff believes that Chapter 157 is no longer needed, and so what we're doing here is on this first reading of Ordinance 1360, we recommend you delete Chapter 157 airport zoning.
Thank you, Jay. Council. Motion and a second to approve first reading of Ordinance 1360. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Jay. Item D, first reading of Ordinance 1361, 2018 appropriations. And John, please.
Thank you. I know for the council this is kind of anticlimactic because they have spent some 8 hours or so in budget meetings going through the budget kind of page by page to get here. But it is a process that annually we get to go through. And it's a pleasure for staff to put this together. I want to thank, we did some employee reviews of this, of our budget proposal. Employees, department heads, supervisors, all of their help in terms of formulating the budget that we presented to the council the 1st of August. And then that you spent a couple days on the 10th and the 15th of August going through that. So before you is the is the 2018 budget ordinance. That includes a number of things that I guess I want to take a moment to point out to the community to talk about some of the great improvements that the council has planned for and budgeted for in 2018. We have an additional $335,000 worth of park improvements that will be taking place or proposed to take place in 2018. These are things from scoreboards to, trails is a separate $260,000 that you have set aside. We have a number of park improvements that are in there. A very visible project for our community is a replacement of Jefferson Street from Clark to Duke Street. That one, will cause some inconvenience for traffic patterns during construction as well as the residents along there, but that is a street that is in need of replacement. So we have Jefferson Street replacement. We have funding for our outside agency included in there. We have materials, about $92,000 for library materials that we annually do. Next year we are starting, it's called AMI, or Advanced Meter Infrastructure. That's a 5-year program which will allow for our utility staff to do our electric ons and offs from the office, or to be able to see those from the service center, as well as be able to do some of our measuring with the water, although we can't turn those on and off from a distance. But that's where meter infrastructure is going. And so that is a project that we anticipate will take about 5 years to implement. We'll be starting that next year. Conversion of LED street lights, that is again budgeted for in 2018. This will be the 3rd year of our 4-year plan to convert our community to LED street lights for the energy savings and also brighter lighting for our streets. The street construction budget for next year is also stepped up. There's additional money that's proposed for some chip sealing and repair work. So we have those items. As we talked about the budget meetings, there's $1 million of second penny money that's being set aside to have a serious discussion and potentially project planning for a downtown infrastructure improvement program. You might remember a couple of years back we had a plan that seemed to have a lot of interest in it, but we needed some funding sources. We need some additional community buy-in, support, and discussion on that. But we have set aside some money that, if that is something that comes along, would be a project that we'd like to try to address. Probably people are wondering, how do we pull all this off? Well, there are, I will say, no water or electric increases that are proposed for 2017. We annually in May evaluate the wastewater rates, and so we may have a slight adjustment there. The only adjustments that we're looking at with respect to rates are the curbside recycling collection is currently $3.50 a month. That's proposed to go to $3.70 a month starting in 2018. And then also an adjustment to our our stormwater fee that is on your property tax bill. I think the stormwater will generate that change about $10,000 more, and the curbside recycling fee will generate around $6,000 more for those respective funds. There is the cost of living adjustment that either reflects union agreements or things that we talked about of 2.25% is included in there. There's a whole host of other smaller projects, but those are a few of the larger visible projects. So thank you to the council, Mike, Jake, Jen did a nice job of helping us together with the hands-on stuff of putting all the document together. I'll be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Any questions for City?
John, this proposal does include then requests from outside agencies that the city helps with. I don't see it right here on these pages, but it's in there.
Correct.
You might reiterate how much that amount. Do you have a total or?
Well, it depends. So we have approximately $55,000 that we take out of the general fund, and then the other part of it comes from the BBB, bed, board, and booze, and that number is probably closer to the, probably around $300,000 was my guess.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Motion is second to approve first reading of ordinance 1361, the 2018 appropriations. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item E, first reading of ordinance 1362, 2017 revised appropriations. And again, John, please.
Well, the one thing I can probably tell you about the 2018 budget is it's wrong. We won't get all those numbers right. Some things, yes, some things will happen, and some things, we'll have costs that won't happen, or we'll have expenditures that weren't planned. And so annually, the City Council, as you adopt one budget, revises the budget for that current year to reflect expenditures. And then we'll have sort of a catch-up or last call type one in December, where we'll do any last-minute changes. But this is a large budget revision that you do have here. I would just note a couple of things. Our sales tax receipts have been a little bit softer, and so the revised budget for 2017 has the first and second penny of sales tax each being decreased by approximately $70,000. So instead of about 1.92, they're about 1.85 million is what we anticipate each penny of sales tax will bring in. So that's one of our larger changes there. Despite our efforts to try to complete the Vermillion River hike bike trail replacement relocation, that is not going to happen this year in terms of actual construction. So the funding for that from the 2017 budget was deferred until the 2018 budget. And then the timing of our Prentice Park improvements, when in September of 2016, when you were adopting the 2017 budget, we were just barely into construction of some of those improvements. And so the uncertainty as to when some of those payments would come due. And then also we did bring it to the City Council, and you approved moving the construction of the parking lot forward to begin this year. And so we anticipate some of that will be paid out this year. So those are just a couple of the changes that we have to make revisions to the general fund, the second penny, as well as other smaller funds. But the attached ordinance explains those in detail.
Questions for John on the 2017? Seeing none? Motion is second to approve the first reading of ordinance 1362, the 2017 revised appropriations. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, John. Item F, final plat of Lot 5A and Lot 8C, Rolling Hills Estates, second edition, in the southwest quarter of Section 6, TN2N, R51W, of the 5th Prime Meridian, Clay County, South Dakota. And you don't look like Jose.
I am not Jose. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
The City of Vermillion received a plat from Brandt Land Surveying on behalf of the owner on a property located in the Rolling Hills Estate subdivision. The lots are located on the south side of Pedersen Road, just before the road turns to the north. This plat falls within the joint jurisdictional zone area, which requires the plat to be reviewed by the county's planning commission and then to have them make a recommendation to the council. The county's planning commission did review the plat at their August 28th meeting, where they do recommend approval of the plat. Staff has reviewed the plat, and it complies with all of the code provisions. All platting fees have been paid by the applicant. Administration recommends approval of the final plat.
Thank you, Shane. Any comments or questions for Shane?
I move approval of the final plat.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the final plat. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Bid openings, fuel quotes. Mike, please.
I think the sheet's up on your screens, and some sitting in front of you. Quotes for unleaded gasoline with 10% ethanol. The first from Stern Oil was $2.25.1 per gallon. Unleaded gasoline regular, $2.49.79 per gallon. Number 2 diesel fuel dyed, $2.0523 per gallon, and number 2 diesel fuel clear, $2.35.88 per gallon. Brunick service on the unleaded with 10% ethanol was $2.27, unleaded regular $2.50, number 2 diesel fuel dyed $2.03, and number 2 diesel fuel clear $2.32. Stern Oil was low on items 1 and 2, and Brunick's was low on 3 and 4.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Motion and second to accept the low bids. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. He is here. I thought you snuck out. Liquefied propane quotes. Shane, please.
Thank you. Annually, the city requests quotes for our yearly supply of liquefied propane. The propane is used by the solid waste department, and a smaller amount used by the wastewater department. Since 2014, we've contracted 17,000 gallons of LP. Nearly all of that, like I just said, goes to the solid waste department, with a small amount going to the wastewater. Quote documents were sent out to 6 LP providers this year. From those 6, we received 3 quotes. The low quote came in at 91.9 cents per gallon, and the high quote came in at $1.06 per gallon. The low quote was received from Butch's Propane. There are funds budgeted by the landfill, recycling center, and the wastewater departments to cover these costs. Administration recommends awarding Butch's Propane with a contract for 17,000 gallons of LP at a cost of 91.9 cents per gallon.
Thank you, Shane. Motion is second to accept the low bid for the liquefied propane quotes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Next is City Manager report. John, please.
Thank you. Well, I kind of feel like a broken record saying this each time, but the tower company still has not gotten back to us with a date when they will have the information that the council and the committee requested in regard to the ordinance that would provide an exception to locating towers closer than 300 feet to residential zones or uses. So once I ever get an answer, I will let the people know, but so far still no answer. Just a couple of great events coming up in our community here. Just to want to remind the public of some street closings. The Main Street closing and then a portion of a couple other streets will be this Wednesday, September 6th. The Tri-State Cruisers have their annual event. So that street closure is this Wednesday from 5 to 9 p.m. And again, it's mainly Main Street with a portion of like Center and Court, etc. But it is this coming, I should say tomorrow, the 6th. And then an even larger street closing that I won't list all the details because they do vary with respective days that are involved. But our community's annual Ribs, Rods, and Rock and Roll is coming up. These street closings do begin on Friday, September 8th, and then they run through a portion of Sunday, September 10th. So a lot of great activities downtown related to Ribs, Rods, and Rock and Roll. We appreciate all of our community volunteers that are helping out with that, and corporate sponsorship. Thank you, Josh, for helping to make that event happen in our community. And then another closing, street closing, is on Sunday. This one is Vermillion. Sanford Vermillion is doing their dedication and ribbon cutting. That is Plum Street from Main Street to Jane Street. Will be closed on Sunday, September 10th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The event, I believe, is actually is 1 to 3, but they have some setup and things that they need to do. So Plum Street will be closed on Sunday with the Sanford Vermillion event. And then one final item, ICAP, which is the Integrated Community Action Planning Group, which is the city, the county, the university, BCDC, and the Chamber of Commerce, and the school district. Thank you. I should have written those out. I knew I'd miss somebody. But those 5 individuals make up, or groups make up the ICAP, and they are doing they've been trying to discuss the community center question for Vermillion. Does Vermillion need a community center? If so, what should that facility contain? So they will be working during the month of September. They're going to have a survey that will be coming out to gather some public input on that. I do know that paper copies will be available at City Hall, the library, and the county auditor's office later this week. The paper copies surveys are not yet out. They're also going to be trying to gather a lot of this input via electronic surveys as well. And so I think there'll be a link on the city's website, the Chamber's Monday Messenger, they'll put that out. But just seeking to gather input with respect to what a potential community center could be in our community. Once the survey does come out, they are asking that people return and to respond by the end of September. And we'll certainly let the council know when that's out and get that posted to our website.
Thank you, John. Questions for our city manager? Anyone? Okay, seeing none, turn to Mike for invoices payable. See if you can stump Mike on something. Any questions?
Move to pay our bills.
Second.
Motion and a second to pay our bills. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Consensus agenda. Set a public hearing date of September 18, 2017 for a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for Old Lumber Company, Inc. for Old Lumber Company Grill and Bar at 15 Court Street.
Consensus agenda.
Second.
Motion to second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Steve?
Yes,
Second.
Motion to second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
it is.